Welcome to the channel, friends. So today's video is going to be another Corvette related video. As you can see here, I got the heads back from KATECH. These are my factory LS9 heads that I sent out and had them do a CNC porting as well as a competition valve job. Now the competition valve job is a 5-angle on the intake and a 2-angle with radius on the exhaust. This is just going to flow a lot more air and gives you better angles as the intake and exhaust valves open and close. Now, the heads are beautiful. They look extremely nice. I'll go over and kind of flip them over and show you guys the runners and everything, but I want to touch on, in this video, the final touches I am doing and why I'm doing them. Now, as you can see, the CNC porting leaves some areas untouched. Now, that's because they have proven their results with data and show that certain cuts on the actual runner are better than others. And sometimes the casting is actually larger than their CNC program and it does not touch off in certain areas. Now, the roof on the intake, you do not want to take material off. You want to take material off the floor on the intake and then the opposite on the exhaust. So on the exhaust, you want to take off material off the roof of the runner and not the floor. And I'll show you this kind of in detail when I flip these things over. But what happens is it does not touch in certain areas because the cutter does not reach that area because it's already large enough. And it's not beneficial to open that up anymore. Now, that produces an inconsistent finish on the inside of the runners, which kind of bothers me. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do a blending or a buffing of the whole surface of the runner to make a one consistent finish. Now, some people might think this is not worth it. Whatever, I don't care. These are my heads. I'm going to go ahead and blend them in, not affecting any of the contour of the porting. I'm just going to blend them in with some really fine grit sandpaper and other kind of abrasive disc tools and just put the finishing touches on it, make it one consistent finish. That way there's no like mismatch or anything in between the different sides of the CNC porting, because obviously they cut in from this side and then they cut in from the other side, and on the inside here there's a little bit of a step. So I want to blend all that in, just like I said, with the really fine grit sandpaper, belt, and disc tools. Different assortment of tools I will be using for this. I'll go over that. But another thing I want to do is I left this unblended. So KATECH offers you the option of blending in the valve job to the bowl, which is from here to here. And same thing for the exhaust. Now, I opted out because I knew I was going to be hand blending this myself. I believe it's like $150 more just to have them blend it. But like I said, I was going to do this anyway, so I held off. And for the most part, it's pretty good. And some of the actual valve seal rings here, the throat, there's a step. There's not so much on the exhaust, but some of these, they catch, like right there, as you can see. That has to be blended in. Same thing right there. It kind of catches. And for the most part, only I think 3 of them need that. All right, sorry there. I forgot to turn on the light for you guys. But as you can see, I think 3 of them here need a little bit of blending. But it's only in a couple spots. For the most part, they are matching and kind of blended already into the bowl itself. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this throat here, about 10 thousandths on each one of these, and blend them in. And like I said, not so much the exhaust, but I will go ahead and do the same thing there. But the very first step will be to take care of this right here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a little bit of a step from the valve job that transitions into the top of the combustion chamber. Now, I'm going to go ahead and shave this down very carefully with a scraper and blend this into the combustion chamber. The exhaust ones do not have as much of a step. Those are actually pretty good, but I still will go ahead and blend those in, as you can see there. I will blend all of that in because right here there is a step, especially on the intake valve job. So that's something they would not blend in, and that's something I noticed, and I'm going to take care of that on my heads. I think it's going to improve flow, because if you think about it, as the air rushes past, as the intake valve is opening, or the exhaust valve is opening, it has to overcome this like kind of step on the transition here. So that is something that most people would not even think about. That's something that I want to take care of on my heads. I want as much flow potential and high performance out of these heads as possible. So that means getting rid of all these areas that would create turbulence and be a hiccup for the airflow. You want the airflow to come out of here smoothly. There is no reason for this to be a step. It's just going to interfere with flow. So there's going to be multiple stages of kind of touching up the heads. The first step is going to be to blend in this valve job here on this face of the head into the combustion chamber and get rid of this nasty transition that's step. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and take care of the runners, make it all consistent finish. And the intake, I'm going to leave a rougher finish, and then the exhaust I'm going to actually polish to almost a mirror finish. Same thing with the combustion chamber. So first take care of this step, then the runners. Then after that, come in and blend in the valve job to the bowl and open this up 10/1000ths. Then take care of polishing and buffing and polishing the combustion chamber, the top here. So all of this is going to get a polished finish. This is going to help out with carbon buildup, preventing it, and as well as getting rid of hot spots and things like that. So the very sharp edge will actually get hotter than the rest of the material. So that's why it's important to take care of any kind of things that are hanging out, dingleberries or whatever. You want a nice, smooth, polished finish on the combustion chamber and nothing impeding airflow. So moving along, here we have the scrapers I'll be using for the touch-up of this step and blending that into the combustion chamber. I also went ahead and made up a set of plugs that go in the intake, in the exhaust. That way I'm not going to booger up the nice valve job as I'm working the heads. So this is going to come in handy. I can put them in there and take them out and going to go to the next combustion chamber and work on that. So that's going to come in handy and prevent any damage on the valve seals themselves. Also here I made up a vacuum plate. Now this is almost done. I have to apply a solid piece of neoprene rubber on this to create a seal. And I will be using this to check the vacuum on the valve. So once I have everything assembled, I'm going to go ahead and use my Mighty Vac hand pump and pump up or pump out the air out of the cylinder when the valves are in place, and go ahead and do a vacuum check on each one of the valves and make sure I have a good seal. I want to see how the valve job is by itself before I go ahead and lap them in. I know I might have to need to do that, but first I want to see how good they are without lapping in. And I just made my own little kind of vacuum plate there that will attach with a hose to the Mighty Vac vacuum pump, hand pump. You can also use an actual vacuum pump if you want, but I just had the stuff laying around and I just made one really quick. So this is almost done. I'm going to have to go ahead and cut out a piece of neoprene rubber, closed cell foam or whatever, and apply it and stick it to this. That way it can create a good seal on the actual cylinder head. So I put some gasket maker on there, as you can see, to create a nice good seal on the threads. That way I don't have any leaks. So pretty much, let me go over the tools I'll be using really quick. There's a lot of stuff, you know, there's a lot of different equipment to use for porting, but here I have some belts that I'm going to be using. This is my own kind of technique. I made this tool. This is a piece of an aluminum rod. I cut a slot in it, and now I can use a piece of belt that's normally used for a kind of like a belt sander. And you can buy these in different grits and then cut them up, and then this creates a super nice finish on the inside. I have two different air tools here. Little mini die grinder, precision Dremel tool. This is operated by air. More cartridge rolls, different grits, Scotch-Brite buffing wheels, different kinds of flap wheels and attachments for the Dremel, which is this. I'll be using this and not an actual electric Dremel. This is an, I forget what it's called. It's like an air die grinder. It goes up to like 50,000 RPM or something, 56,000. It's pretty nice. So I can attach all different kind of attachments, like the Scotch-Brite buffing wheels to buff out the combustion chamber and to buff out the exhaust to a polished finish. Different mandrels, carbide burrs. I won't be using those today, but I'll be using that in the future to do my other pieces, like porting out the supercharger. Here we have Optivisor. It comes in handy when looking at surface finishes. Then I have a test piece of aluminum, which this comes in handy because you can test out your tool and see how it's doing, compare different finishes. You can do one finish up here in the middle and then the bottom. So I use this shit piece of aluminum just as a test piece. That way I can test out to see what kind of finish I'm producing with said tool. So that's really quick what I'm using. Like I said, these belts come in handy. They're the bee's knees. I mean, they produce the best finish. And this one here is a 400 grit. This is like, I don't know, 80 or 100. So that's what I'll be using. And then pretty much it just takes a lot of time. You know, it's a really time-consuming process, but I want to get things right, and I want to make sure the heads flow a lot of air and work out great for my car. So like I said, I'm going to come in and just blend in these areas and not take out a lot of material. I'm going to leave KATECH's beautiful CNC porting and the contours created and generated by their CNC program. I'm just going to go in and blend this stuff out. I'm not going to take off any material really, and I'm just going to blend it in to have a nice consistent finish. And I'll go ahead and round off these guides a little bit more, and then I'll make it look really, really nice. So let me flip these heads over and show you kind of what the runners look like from the other side, and we'll go from there. As you can see there, the roof of the intake runner is really untouched, because that's not an area where you want to machine. You just don't want to hog out everything in the runner. There is a strategy to the porting. So people who know porting know that you do not touch the roof. You do not want to make the long radius bigger and longer. You want to work on the short radius. Make that shorter and allowing air to flow quicker into the actual cylinder head. So as you can see there, that is the intake. Let me see if I can lift this up. Close up of the exhaust runners with some light. On the exhaust side, you open up the roof and not the floor. That's the reason why these LS9 and LS7 exhaust ports have a D shape in them, because it actually flows more because that floor is elevated and is closer to the center of the runner, which produces higher velocity along the floor. So a little bit of a lesson there. That's the reason why they're shaped with a D port, D-shaped opening. See if we can get a close-up of the valve job. There is a radius on the exhaust right here. Let's get a nice shot. So from here to here, there's a radius, and then it goes into two angles here. And this right here is the throat. So this is going to flow a lot more than the factory valve job that was on here which just had, I believe, 3 angles with no radius. So this is a much more higher performance valve job. Can't wait to freaking get the car all put back together and see how she rips. So let me put the camera down and flip the head. So these are 275cc on the intake and 94cc on the exhaust for runner size, runner volume. So really beautiful work on the CNC porting by KATECH, but the surface still is rough. I just don't like the idea of that because a rougher surface is going to keep oil and just debris and stuff more so than a smoother surface. It just will stay cleaner, in my opinion. But you don't want it polished. The intake, there's really no benefit to polishing it. There is a benefit, though, to polishing out your exhaust. As you can see there, the bronze guides. Let me go ahead and get the light underneath this cylinder head. Check out the blending of that guide boss and the way it's just so contoured perfectly. Such a smooth transition from the runner to the rest of the bowl area, and it just looks so nice. A lot of this stuff is it's blended really well, even with CNC, even though in some areas there is a mismatch, but really happy with the way it is. I mean, you could just run them just the way they are, but me being a little bit, kind of OCD and kind of anal, I want to make sure the whole thing has a consistent finish. KATECH also, when they did the valve job, I believe part of the package is a cylinder head deburring, as well as refreshing all these surfaces. So all the mating surfaces got cleaned up and sanded, and they just look beautiful. They really do. They also give you an engraving on every side of the cylinder head. So front and back get an engraving. And I think that comes with the CNC porting, but when you do the valve job, you get this extra cylinder head deburring step process, which is beautiful because no matter where you grab the cylinder head now, it's all deburred. Like everywhere is deburred. Like every single edge that used to be sharp and would cut you is now deburred. Like I'm talking about everywhere. Like the whole thing must have been done either on the CNC or by hand because it is beautiful. I mean, these surfaces here, the mating surfaces, are really nice. They're ready to go, ready to accept a gasket. There's really no much more needed work to do on that. Really happy with the way it's presented. It came back really clean in a bag, well packaged, and pretty much ready to go out of the box. But everything is deburred, even these openings here, the runners. The inside here is not deburred, so the inside underneath the valve covers where your rockers sit, that's still all sharp. But everything on the outside was taken care of, including even right here. So you can see right there that is even deburred. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and start the process of finishing up the cylinder heads. This process is going to take a couple days, I'm pretty sure, maybe even 3 days. I'm just going to do it off and on over the next weekend. So I'll just show you guys clips here and there of me kind of in the process of working each and every step, and kind of, you know, kind of a quick summary of what I'm doing. But that's pretty much the summary here. The heads are almost ready, and I can't wait to put them on. So let me get started, and I'll show you guys the process.